I can't believe that we're wading into this, but here we are. Zach Lowe, this is your area of expertise. What do you think of that take?
My eyebrows just got singed from the flames coming through the television screen. Oh, my God, Bobby Marks. Look, I think the discussion on Steph Curry has actually been corrected to rate him properly. I think all this enthusiasm after this fourth ring is appropriate. I thought he was historically a little bit underrated before. But number two, Bobby, put down the mojito poolside at whatever hotel you're staying at in Vegas. Part of the all-time rankings has to be about longevity. LeBron James is very likely going to be the all-time leading scorer in the history of the NBA. He's going to be top 5 in assists. He's one of the greatest passers of all time. At his peak, he was one of the greatest perimeter/big man, whatever you want to call him, defenders of all time. Before you even get into Kareem and Wilt and Russell and Magic and all the players that are in that stratosphere, a stratosphere where Steph belongs, I just can't. I mean, LeBron James is there with MJ, and they sit in a tier, I think, above everybody else except for maybe Kareem. I love Steph. He's got a top 10 case now. This is a little too much for me.
Legs, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with so much of what Zach just said. I'll say this. When you start talking about anticipation and what you're about to watch, when you sit down and watch an NBA game, I think Steph Curry possesses more of that element than any player since Michael Jordan. That must-see TV element, I think Steph Curry, for me personally, it's very subjective, he is the closest thing to Jordan in terms of that. I got to see this guy if he's playing tonight. But when you start talking about ranking guys and where they are on the historical list, yeah, I don't think you can put him ahead of LeBron James. I think it's a two-man conversation for the greatest player of all time, and I don't think it's going to be a long conversation because I think it's Michael Jordan, but I think LeBron James is the only other guy that I think you can make a legitimate debate for as the greatest player of all time other than MJ. So I don't think Steph's in that category, but I think he has ascended to top 10 status for sure. And again, box office, man, Steph Curry to me, that's what you want to bring every single night because you just don't know what you're about to watch.
Meek, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the globalization of the game has increased the talent in basketball, which is why I give my nod to LeBron James even over Michael Jordan. Steph Curry's not in the conversation right now. I think that we can do it like superlatives in the yearbook, like he's the greatest of all time when it comes to shooting. He's the greatest of all time when it comes to box office, according to Legs. Like, he's the greatest of all. He changed the game more than anybody else. Speaking of Steph Curry, but he's not just the flat-out GOAT, and he's certainly not above LeBron James. If you're going to put anybody at 2, it's going to be LeBron James. It's not going to be Steph Curry.
Okay, we'll see. One way or another, Bobby Marks weighing in, and I myself am here for it. I hope that you are here for our next WNBA action, actually. We got that coming up. We got Asia Wilson and the Aces in Connecticut. We will see them Sunday. That'll be 1 Eastern on ABC and on the ESPN app. We get back to football coming up next. Peyton's Places. Which coaches need to be looking over their shoulders this year? Sean Payton has a list of 3 teams he's interested in joining. I bet give you one guess.
LeBron James and Anthony Davis. For me, you'd be silly not to think that the Los Angeles Lakers can contend in the Western Conference.
All right, and then Dominique Foxworth, jump in here with me. If I said the Nets are a championship team if they keep KD and Kyrie, would that be fact or fiction?
Well, I feel like that's fiction, and I understand what Legs is saying about Kyrie's talent, but the inconsistency and the unpredictability of both him and Ben Simmons, like, that makes me very scared because they're 2 of their big 3 are guys that it seems like in recent history you can't rely on. They got a coach in Steve Nash who I assume is getting better but was definitely outcoached by Ime Udoka in the first round of playoffs last year, so it's hard for me to see them with the defense that they play being a legitimate competitor if they bring those guys back.
All right, well, we'll see. That still might be their best bet. In the meantime, all of this really begins because Kevin Durant has requested a trade. The commissioner, Adam Silver, spoke to the media at the NBA Summer League and talked about the issue of players demanding trades. Here's what he said.
This needs to be a two-way street. Teams provide enormous security and guarantees to players, and the expectation is in return that they'll meet their end of the bargain. I'm realistic that there's always conversations that are going to go on behind closed doors between players and their representatives on teams, but we don't like to see players requesting trades, and we don't like to see it playing out the way it is.
Look, I love the fact that he said that, to be completely honest with you. And let's just, I mean, Kevin Durant signed a contract extension last year, willingly. He didn't have to. He extended his contract. Legs, why are you not hearing? I think Legs is not hearing what we are saying. So, Zach Lowe, I'll come to you. What do you make of Adam Silver saying that, and what, if anything, might change about the current situation?
Well, certainly he's speaking on behalf of team governors who are very anxious about what is happening. Look, trade requests, they've been a fabric of the NBA for a long time, a part of the fabric, and teams tend to do well when their players request trades, even if it's unpleasant. The slippery slope to me is what happens in situations where a player doesn't want to be there, doesn't officially request a trade because it's against the rules to do that, but everyone knows what's going on. And all of a sudden, you know, the player's back hurts, or the player's effort starts to slack off, or the player starts to make noise about, you know, I need to get my knee cleaned out. Those are really difficult ethical issues, because you cannot doubt players when they say that they're injured or hurt. That's just not okay. And in the NBA, we have guaranteed contracts. And I think there's been some push among the governors to say, is there some middle ground between guaranteed contracts and NFL-style non-guaranteed contracts, which are obviously a non-starter for the players? That's really tricky to find something where you get more money depending on how many games you play, or lose money depending on how many games you miss. Those are really, really difficult issues, some of which are blood issues for the players' union. But this is not going away, and there's a lot of different flavors. It's not just official trade requests. It's a lot of other flavors of this.
Yeah, and load management was another piece of it, sort of a peripherally connected piece to this that Silver brought up when he had that press conference the other day. Dominique Foxworth, the reason I wanted you in this conversation is you have the unique perspective of having been in a leadership position not only with the NFL Players Association, where they have all of their contractual stuff, but also in the NBA Players Association. So you understand all of this. To what degree do you think this is a concern?
I mean, I think that we can't disagree with Adam Silver that none of us really want all of this, like player demands and player movement. The game is more fun when the player is there in a specific location and we get to know them. But the problem that I have with it is this always ends up as a conversation that kind of comes down on the players and blames them for the result, when it's actually a result of the system. When you have, like, limits or caps on the amount of salary that players can receive, a lot of the power that they have, a guy like Kevin Durant is more valuable than the salary that they're paying him. If you're not going to pay him in salary, then he's going to take his payment in power and forcing his way in different locations. So I think those things go hand in hand. And then you compound it by the fact that they complain about load management, but we already have an 82-game season where a lot of the games are irrelevant, with like half of the teams making the playoffs. So that's what bothers me, is that the kind of blame and ire of the fans and also of executives comes down on the players when the players are just like properly responding to the way that the incentives are set up in the current structure. So if they are willing to remove some of those impediments, like salary caps and max salaries, I think that players would be less likely to move along from team to team and use their power in the way that they have.
It's interesting, and I think fair in every way. Legs, you played in the league a long time. What do you think?
Well, I think, listen, for the most part, it's a moot point, because that ship sailed. I think when you look at the history of team sports, there's never been a group of athletes that have had more power than NBA players do now. And it's taken a long time to get to that point. They're not going to give it up. I think the only way you could potentially ever see this change would be a really long, protracted holdout, lockout, whatever it may be, where you might miss half an NBA season, because this is a topic that I think the owners would have to be willing to really fall on that sword in order to make this happen, and willing maybe to give up an entire season to try to get this somehow changed. I just don't think the Players Union would ever budge even 1 inch on this, because players have more flexibility, control, and power than they have ever had, and they're not giving that up easily.
Okay.